We are live. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to your favorite Friday night late. What do we call it now? Hash slash growing slash whatever podcast with your host, Superior Buds, Fragoli, and Pedro. It is Variables. Tonight, we have with us Matthew. Matthew has been with Eden with us now for a long time, and I wanted to bring him on to fill in some holes from last week's conversation. Matthew started in the industry when he was 18 years old, primarily in the hemp industry. Well, only in the hemp industry until he was 22. So for the first 4 years of his career, he was in the hemp industry doing cloning for seed production, as well as just cloning for genetics. And he made his entry into. I guess before that, he did a lot of studying R&D and different watering techniques. Aquaponics, synthetics, organics, KNF. He's kind of been around the block, honestly, in a good way. In this instance. And then like I said, in 2020, or when he was 22, excuse me, he moved into the THC industry, if you will, the cannabis industry, the dark side, if you will say. Welcomed him over to the dark side, and he's been running the organic grow at Eden, where I run the processing facility, running hash and making the rosin, but he gives the gold that I then extract. So he's had a lot of experience on both sides of the fence, and growing for multiple different reasons. So I feel the well-rounded aspects that Matthew can bring, I think, are going to be a good conversation piece. So I guess.
Cheers, man. Welcome.
Thanks for
Welcome,
having me,
Matthew.
guys. I'm looking forward
Cheers.
to it.
Yeah, I was stoked. You've been on my list of individuals to have on the show for a while now, and I guess, I don't know, for whatever reason it just didn't wasn't meant to be until now, and it actually worked out very well. We had last week we had Shark Mouse Farms, who's a member in the industry, who's a synthetic grower here on Instagram, an educator, and it just kind of fit to have you come in after the synthetic conversation, especially being you've had experience. You've had your feet in both sides of the fence, like I've said, both the synthetics and the organic side. So I thought it might be a good conversation. I thought it would. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I think, I'll preface with just to start. I don't think there's a right way to grow, right?
Good.
It's whatever you feel like doing. It's what works for you, what you understand. I have a preference, of course. I feel like there's sustainable growing methods, and then there's unsustainable growing methods. So doesn't necessarily mean one's right or one's wrong. It's just about what you want to do and what you're trying to achieve. So yeah, I mean, when it comes to the background of it all, yeah, I mean, I've hopped into all of it except for hydro. So one way I haven't grown yet. So, but maybe one day, maybe one day.
Have you always had your fingers in large scale grows?
Yeah, other than like home growing, my professional industry is all larger scale. The first grow I worked at was a 2-acre greenhouse, and it was all propagation based. And we were just supplying to farms around Colorado all the clones, and we would help set them up and get that running. Um, and then we did the same thing with seed production. We were making feminized seeds, hopping around, going to a couple places all over the country. Um, the smallest farm we were doing with seed was 300 acre. And so it's always been larger scale for me for sure. Yeah.
Do you still grow at home? Is that still?
No, I don't. Once I kind of moved into THC, I also don't really smoke, right? So I smoke a little bit here and there. So if I grew at home, I'd have too much product to know what to do with, so I don't grow at home. I haven't grown at home for a year now, mainly just because I get my fulfillment from what I'm doing at work with what I want to do. Like I like to grow, and it's a lot of fun for me. um, but I grow so much for what I do all day that I don't really feel the need to come home and do it some more.
Yeah, you do. You do definitely grow a lot. You have your fingers in the dirt a lot over
Yeah,
there for
it's
sure.
14,000 plants now.
Yeah, we'll get there for sure.
Yeah, yeah, just about.
I bet you there's going to be a lot of, I don't know if I'd say disgruntled, but I bet you there's going to be some eyebrows lifted to the fact that you don't smoke.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I get that a lot in the industry as is. I used to smoke all the time. I guess in reality, when I started to smoke less and less is when I took over Eden. I just was like, "Oh, that looks yummy right there, man."
Damn for Growly.
Yeah.
Damn, right?
Um, but when I took over Eden, I started smoking less and less because I just felt like it was my first introduction into really running a larger facility. And I felt like it was important for me to kind of cut back on smoking and focus more on it. I still smoked a little bit. I maybe smoke like once a week, and I've kind of honestly kind of leaned more into edibles, light dosing, and just when I have nothing to do, I'll just be like, I'll pop a little 10 milligrams, and I get pretty toasted now,
That
So
is that is the benefit of not indulging as much.
yeah,
It's when you do. It's
yeah,
like,
and I mean, whenever I've get taken a dab from you, I'm like, all right, I'm fucked up, I'm like, this is a lot, you know.
We call that a cheap date, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Oh no, I don't feel
Absolutely.
bad about it at all. I like the change, honestly. I definitely at a certain point I feel like I'm going to get back into it a little bit more. Probably if I ever start growing at home again, which I've been thinking about. I just bought a house and we've got a half-acre property and kind of perfect for some outdoor.
Uh-huh.
So, and I also feel like most growers will feel this way. Sometimes you get a little snobby and you don't want to smoke other people's stuff, and you don't want to go to the dispensary. There's a select people that I'll smoke product from, but I'm also not a concentrate guy. So a lot of people that I will smoke their product are like Pedro. He's a concentrate person, so I don't dab. If I dab, I take half of a dab. So
Matthew, I'm gonna say this while I'm off camera right now. I was literally thinking about this about 2 or 3 hours ago, about how I had a handful of rosin jars on my desk that I hadn't finished. And that's not an uncommon thing with me. I'm just not a huge rosin fan, just in general, right? That being said, I couldn't tell you where Pedro's jars are. Those are long gone and have been cleared. I mean, down to the last little tiniest little bit that might be in that jar, And
yes.
it's one of the few, if not the only jars that I've done that with in rosin. And I just got it. And this is the part where I'll come back on camera and say, Pedro, you deserve the props. You grow and wash
Thanks,
some
man.
fire rosin, and it's far and above and beyond just about everything else I've had, man.
I appreciate it.
Back
More
to
than
my
you know.
steak.
Back to my steak. More than you know. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I'll smoke your shit any day, but it's got to be a day when I'm not up at the grow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know. We've made that mistake a couple times already.
Yeah, and then I'm not. I'm like, let's avoid people for a little bit now.
All right, so so you did some R&D. Go into that a little bit.
So when I was working for EcoGen, I was working with my buddy Brad, and it was just the two of us in this pretty large facility, and these guys didn't really have much of an idea of what they wanted to do, so we kind of just got to do whatever we want there. So we trialed out some aquaponics, we trialed out different brands of synthetic grows, we trialed out like liquid organic properties, and then we tried building super soil, living soil, and KNF properties, like just kind of messing around with multiple different things. Excuse me, drinking a beer. So they were we just kind of had free range to do whatever we wanted. And that's when I actually got into doing more living soil and KNF practices. Because out of all of it, what we were doing, it just had the best results in our opinion there. When we were using salts, we had one room where we were trying 4 different growing methods at a time. Whenever our salt plants had the highest pest pressure, even with spraying, like it had most consistent pest pressure. When you looked at our living soil beds, which were right next to it, consistently had lower pest pressure in the same exact room at the same exact time, and we just didn't spray those plants as much. So I just felt like there was something there. And when looking at the aquaponics, I said to this a little bit earlier, I tried to find the best from the start. I've always felt I need to find the most sustainable way to grow, because I try to have my background has always been focusing on sustainability and kind of being in balance with nature, because I felt the industry is pretty wasteful. So aquaponics, you're using so much water. So I kind of steered away from that. My buddy Brad loves it. It can be very organic style of growing depending on what you're using. But I just felt it was too much water. Yield wise, we got highest yield off of salts, right? Um, Super fast uptake, pushes the plant to like its utmost boundary, but and it was a higher specific terpene, right? So I felt like with the salts, we were getting really high gassy notes, really high sour notes, really high sweet notes. So it was like really hitting on a lot of notes. So it was good quality flower, but high pest pressure, right? You look at your living soil, it was second highest yields, but way more earthy kind of. I would like it almost had more of a weed smell on most of the genetics we were running. Now, this was also hemp that we were doing, so you kind of have you have less variety in the plants at that stage in time for us, because it was all for distillate. We just got to play around. But the terps from our living soil stuff kind of had like this more earthy note, kind of classic Kush smell from when I first started smoking weed. If we had a little bit more fruity strain, it kind of had like a rotten fruit smell to it. And it wasn't really hitting like these super high sweet notes. It was extremely terpy, just in a very different way. And it was also more work to get it right. Right. So like it was both of our first time really doing living soil. And so we had a lot of like trial and error there. Now the aquaponics was, in my opinion, my least it was the lowest performing, lower yields, lower terps, but it was probably the least maintenance. You kind of let the fish do their work, and you put a little food in there every once in a while. You feed your fish, and it's kind of the least amount of maintenance. You just got to make sure your water's clean and you get good aeration there. But I didn't focus too much on that one. My buddy Brad, he was really into it, so he kind of took more control there. And then we just kind of trialed out different stress techniques, when to do them. Scrogging versus sea green, lollipopping versus not heavy. Upskirting. So we just kind of trialed out all these different methods that everybody does. We just kind of It was really an opportunity for us to be doing, you know, playing. It's like if you were growing at home on a larger
Yeah, for
scale
sure.
and you got to do whatever you want. So it was a lot of fun, you know, and they
When
didn't
I
care about the results. So
Yeah,
that's
when I
even
first
nicer.
moved up to the woods, I dove into aquaponics pretty deep.
Hmm.
It's a lot of fun. Learned a lot,
Yeah.
played a lot with siphons and, all the fun shit that comes along with aquaponics and getting all the different tables to flow. But the dual root zone setup, it was such a pain in the ass. It was like I'm building this overly complicated system. It's too much.
Yeah, we maybe did like 10 plants on it. He actually does it now all the time. Oh, and actually, one other thing. I can't speak too much on this because I've signed an NDA currently. And I had an NDA signed back then as well. We were working with this restructured water, and we work with this up at Eden now as well. And we have to sign an NDA because it's in process of getting patented and everything. And I know people out there have probably heard of structured water, but this is a very different style of structured water.
It damn well better be, because structured water is a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah, no, I like. There's a lot of science behind this one. Most structured water is like adding gas to it. The only thing I can really say about this is it is actually changing the water molecule.
Yeah,
So
because the whole thing with structured water is it becomes unstructured like instantly again.
yeah, so this
Like,
is
they're like, no, we're
stable.
structuring it, putting it in a bottle, and then when you drink it, it's
Yeah,
that
no,
whole thing.
this is stable. You know, we're gassing it on a like every day we gas it, right? I start up the machine and gas it. But it's actively it can stay in my RO tanks for, about a week. But we go in through the water pretty consistently. And this I've worked with other structured water before, and I saw no difference. But this is like it's something real, and I was very
Yeah,
skeptical at first.
I would have to see the data, because
Oh yeah.
that's I'm a science guy. I'm an engineer.
Yeah, if I can ever disclose information.
Yeah,
I'm happy
repeatable
to.
processes are what I believe.
Yeah, and we're actually doing trials for these guys up at Eden, and we have a 2-year contract with them to give them data, right? And so we're trying to establish for them. Like I'm pretty like I try to stay unbiased in it. I see results, and I've been working with it for a couple of years now. But we're trying to give them a length of data, like 2 years worth of data, where with our backtrack data that we have for the past year before, or 2 years before we had them in, to prove if they're doing what they say they're doing. Yeah. So we're basically either going to make or break it for them. If it performs the way they're saying it, then it's high quality. If not, then it's just like, hey, we got it for free. We got to play with it,
I don't want to tangent too much, and I do apologize to all of the panelists and our guests and everyone here in chat and everyone listening for being late. I had to step away a few moments ago to floss some corn out of my teeth and wipe some grease out of my beard, but I'm back. I had a delicious dinner. It was a very late dinner, and I do apologize. I don't know exactly what you guys are talking about right now, I'll be honest, but when I stepped away, you guys were talking about soil and growing organically, and how you were getting different terpene profiles based on the nutrients, the media, etc. I hope I didn't miss this, and I apologize if I did, and just tell me to shoo and go away if you guys already covered this. How much of a factor is strictly the nutrient lineup in the salt-based system in
Like,
the
go ahead,
terpene
sorry.
profile?
So like different salt lineups.
Sure, like advanced nutrients versus Canon nutrients, right? I mean, those are probably
I
two
didn't
pretty
see
similar
jack shit
examples.
of a
But
difference there, really.
okay, so it's more or less in these salts versus organics, or more maybe more the
Well,
media that you're growing in, or
wait,
just
let's break that down. Like, what are terpenes? They're secondary metabolites,
volatile organic compounds,
right? VOCs. They're not primary functions of the plant. Nutrients do not drive what terpenes are created. Stresses.
So you're telling me the Botanicare stuff that they sell that has different flavors on the bottles aren't actually doing anything?
All our old sweeteners, right? Berry sweetener.
Right?
Remember that?
Yeah, raw sweets, stuff like that. Yeah.
Is that still around? I mean, I don't know, but
oh yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
people still use it for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So what about like terpinator and stuff? Is that
Dr.
a way to
Bug
increase?
has a really good talk, and he did a really good overview on this with Mr. Grow It, actually. Going over that there's anecdotal evidence. There's no repeatable science that one is better than the other, salts and organics. The terpene profiles are different. And he's like, I agree. But why are the terpenes different? And it's the built-in stressors you have in organics.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that are causing. So it's the bacteria, the good and the bad. They're helping you, both of them.
Yeah.
So it's the plant reacting to what's going on in the soil, what's going on in the environment, what's going on with the light. We talked about this before, indoor versus outdoor. You can't reproduce the sun entirely, but we can.
Not yet.
Not yet. but we're getting damn close
We're
with.
getting pretty fucking close.
I mean, these controllers, my ICLs are completely controllable. 4 channels.
Yeah, and the spectrums and all that, man.
But we
like,
can do things the sun can't do also.
That's
like
true.
Dr. Bugbee talks about skipping a day with your UV, not running your UV daily, so that the plant doesn't become accustomed to it being on. So every time it does come on, it's a shock, it's a stressor, drives sunscreen, which is what we're looking for.
Wait, you're telling me the weed that I need a tolerance break from needs a tolerance break while it's growing? What the heck?
Yeah, you can't let it get too used to it.
Well, it's the same kind of thing with
It's a little bit of chaos. And that's, I think, where you're talking organics, though. You get that little bit of chaos, which is where you're getting those extra terpenes from. It's producing those secondary metabolites.
Matthew, could you educate us on possibly another stressor that we can induce ourselves, whether intentionally or unintentionally, probably more often? The dryback.
Oh yeah, I mean dryback, right? I kind of really cut back on my watering in the last like 2 to 3 weeks of flower. Really pushes out terps, right? So one, I don't have a huge science background, right? I didn't go to college or anything like that. I've just been growing for a very long time. So I'm more of a field grower or anything.
You got your degree on a farm, bro. It just happened to be an indoor farm. Well, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Maybe it was outdoor.
Most of my growing's been greenhouse or outdoor.
So you're kind of in the middle, a little bit best of both worlds.
Yeah. So, it was a part of just playing around and talking to other people. But definitely when you're cutting it back, you get this huge boost. Like early stage flower, I'm probably watering in the beds at Eden. They're, about 100 gallons a day, right? So very heavy watering. By the last 3 weeks, I'm about 50, right? So I cut that back in half. Yeah.
Is that a consistent 100 gallons a week throughout those first 6, 7, 8, however many weeks you guys are going?
So it's 100 gallons a day, actually.
Oh, sorry, a day. Yeah, you did say that. 100 gallons a day. Does that fluctuate much? Because I mean, I've slowly over the last couple of years been, well, not really slowly. I've been slowly learning and figuring it out, but I kind of quickly transitioned from 7+ years of cocoa and salts to just straight up soil and water, indoors. And one of those steps was increasing my pot size because I was rocking those, beautiful 5 gallons with the cocoa in them. And then
you need your 30s, man.
Yeah, man. So that's the thing. I went from 5s to had some 7s laying around, tried out some 10s, bumped up to 15s. I'm like, maybe 20 is enough. Now I'm at 25. So you're telling me I got to go to 30.
30, I think, is like the perfect soil pot.
Well, I just bought out the grocery store of all their 25 gallons, so we're gonna.
That's close. That's close enough, man. That's close enough.
I figured it was big
just
enough.
Just mound
to
your soil.
10 gallons. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. They're coming from 10 gallons, so I could, I kind of do that. Although I don't like doing that when I'm reusing the soil. Maybe we could talk about that later. Gosh, I've talked so much I don't even remember what point of my story.
We were talking about fluctuating in water.
And dry.
Oh yeah, we were actually talking about
the 100 gallons per day.
Yeah.
I've noticed with the bigger pot sizes, like specifically the 25 gallons that I'm in now, and maybe this is just the size of the plant that was in it converting from veg to flower, but that first like week doesn't really drink too much, and then all of a sudden with that stretch period, right, and what's really triggers into 12-12, it's like they drink a lot and then they slow down again, and then they started drinking really heavy when they're putting on that nug meat, right? And then, like you're saying, at the end, they just need
to stay alive.
You could overwater them really quickly, honestly, at the end, So like you got to really be like either lifting pots, maybe not lifting beds because those things are massive, but you got to know, Is 100 gallons a day an average, or do you see that same fluctuation in the beds, or do you have enough kind of leeway in a giant, bed like that you can just give it the same amount every day?
Yeah, so I guess I should probably kind of go over a little bit of the style of what we're doing there, so you can so it's a little bit more understandable, right? So I'm talking 100 gallons a day, right? When we do a 3 to 4 week veg time, right? So by week 3, we're hitting that 100 gallons a day mark, right? And I do kind of increase it that second week and a half, like probably day 7 of flower after we flipped, it would probably increase up to about 150. Maybe at the highest point of drinking, I'm hitting like 175. But we're talking 120 plants per bed, right? So it's a large number of plants. It's kind of a sea of green
lot.
style.
little
Yeah.
over a gallon a plant then.
Yeah, gallon of plants a day. But we're also, like, I'll kind of just go from day 1 on, right? So I saturate the beds pretty heavily on planting day, or like 2 days before planting, get all my amendments out, get the top dresses going, put the straw out, stuff like that. So I'm putting in things to help retain moisture quite a lot, right? So I'm piling on that straw pretty heavily, so we're not evaporating all that moisture. And then we plant, and I usually don't water for 5 days at least.
Oh
After
wow.
that, yeah,
And that's going into flower, or that's at the end of
that's
veg.
that's planting day.
That's planting.
Oh, planting day. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't water for at least
That makes
5 days
sense.
after that. And
Yeah, the roots got to go find the water.
Yeah.
You don't give
yeah,
them
I
some-
let
Yeah.
it dry back a little bit there. But then after that, I slowly probably increase from about 75 gallons a day up to that 100 to 150 range. And in the summertime, I'm definitely using more. I'm probably close right now to getting up to 200 gallons a day on some of my beds, right? So it depends on what time of year too. Our rooms are much hotter right now. We're getting more intense sun, so I'm using a little bit more water.
Are you testing the water content at all? Or just
Like in the beds?
yeah,
And
like
soil testing.
actually
Yeah, so we do soil testing. I don't really do any leachate tests, but we do saturated pastes and soil tests, right? So I make sure to test
or like
what's in
but
it.
like excuse me, volumetric water content. Like your
I feel it.
your water holding capacity. Okay, so you're just
Yeah.
testing it by hand and seeing.
Yeah, I go around, I dig in the beds, and I see how wet it is, how dry it is, right? And that's what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm a field grower, right?
Mhm.
I like to go in, I like to dig in the plants, I like to be up in there to kind of. That's what helps me understand, right?
This dude barely wears shoes all
Yeah.
day long.
Yeah,
like-
I'm a flip flop kind of guy.
Wait, you're not on the Crocs train yet?
No, I've got some track labs right now, which are pretty nice. They give me a nice tan line on the feet. I like them.
That's awesome.
But like
the one thing let me interrupt real quick here. The one thing that my brain keeps doing right now, as you've alluded to a couple different times, with the size of the beds, how many plants, the veg time, you're listing off a lot of variables, and I think that's that's the name of the podcast, obviously, and I think that's one of the biggest things is playing with all the variables that you have. I mean, you've got a lot at your fingertips there.
But he's also, I feel like he also is experienced enough to know that like he can feel that moisture content, that water. What was the word, the scientific term you used? Superior
Volumetric water
content holding
or capacity or water holding capacity. There's like 4 different
all mean the same
letter
thing,
acronym.
right?
Yeah. How much water does the media hold?
Yeah, and that's one of those things that you can legitimately just feel through experience. Now, you're not going to get that your first grow. It's probably not going to come for the first couple years with the growing, you know what I mean? Because it takes experience knowing different pot sizes, different media, different times of that cycle, right? But like there are things like that you can just kind of intuitively figure out. But the problem that Superior is going to tell us about right now is the fact that it's not a repeatable science and you don't have the data to back it up, right?
And
so
at
it's
that
like
scale, he has a buffer. You've got a much larger buffer.
Yeah.
Me growing in a 1 gallon, if I'm off by 5% on one day, my plants are fucking dead. Right? Like,
yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between what I'm doing and what the average home grower is doing, right? Like I'm growing 120 plants per bed, 2,100 in one of my larger rooms, and my largest room is 3,600. My smallest flower room is 1,400.
But even
plants.
at commercial scale, doing my style, you have to have the percentage.
Yeah, if you're doing pots, you have to be really on it, right?
Yeah.
But like if I lose 5-10 plants in a bed, it's like it's not this huge impact.
Right.
So it of course sucks, and I don't want to lose 5 to 10 plants. But if it happens, I'm like, I got 150 and 110 more to go, and I can make up that lost weight, And since we're doing Sea of Green, I'm really only losing
Fill in the gap.
Yeah, like 3
exactly.
ounces, quarter pound maybe. So it's not a huge impact. Now, if I lose 100 plants, it's a big deal, right? So yes, I have this huge buffer, and it's nice to have that buffer because I have this nice big option of just playing around, right? And if one spot's a little drier, then I just go in and hand water that section, right? Because I've got automated irrigation. And that's where I'm going around and I'm digging in the beds. If it's a little dry there, I'm going to fill up my tank. I'm going to water it, right? And then I get that place saturated a little more intensely than the other areas so that it can start catching a little bit more water.
So tell us about your feeding method and your automatic watering system and what you're watering with. If anything, do you pH? Answer all these questions for me if you would.
So my RO comes out at about 6.5 on a normal day, right? So
Okay.
we'll call it 6.5. And this is all the stuff
Have you
I'm going to
tested
talk about.
ppms? Is it like pretty much
ppm's
0?
14.
Okay, yeah. Nice,
super good
nice.
RO.
Hell yeah.
And then we structure the water too, and it drops our TDS and ppms even further. So we're watering at about 7, and it actually can bring our pH down to about like 6.2, right?
Mhm.
The one bonus about living soil, or not the one bonus, one of the big bonuses about living soil, and we kind of talked about buffers earlier, is that you have a bit of a buffer in terms of pH, right? Your soil pH is
Mhm.
important because you can, of course, lock out nutrients and everything. But I've run really good cycles with a soil pH of like 7.2, 7.5. Once you get up into those high 7s and 8 ranges,
We
that's
got to
when
be
you're
pretty
gonna start
far
seeing,
off.
yeah, you start seeing problems there. So irrigation wise, I used to water in gypsum, so just calcium sulfate, but we took that out because it was just hard to keep the ppms proper there every day. So we didn't really know how much calcium we were putting out. And luckily, with living soil and cannabis in general, you can't really overdo calcium too much in that organic style. Now, if you're using CalMag, you can fuck your shit up. But in living soil, you've got this buffer. You've got your soil food web to kind of process all that food that you're putting out. So we've just recently actually swapped over to probably 80% of our food is going out via amendments. So we're putting out alfalfa meal, blood meal, bone meal, um, you know, uh, granular poultry, feather meal, things like that.
Is that top dress or
Yeah.
teas? Okay.
Top dress. And no till, no nothing, just top dress it all out, right? So we just put it on top, and then we throw our straw on top of that, and then we irrigate it into the beds.
Mhm.
So we do that at planting, and then we do that 4 weeks in, or whenever we're flipping, right? So then we get another adjustment when we're going into flower.
Do you have to do any? Do you feel like you have to do any amendments around like in week 4 to 6 to kind of prepare for some of those heavy kind of feeder strains? Do you?
No. So when I'm hitting heavy feeders, right, that's where around 20% comes in, right? So I've got my KNF solutions, that's our other feeding method, on top of foliar feeds. So we
Oh.
foliar feed KNF, and then we foliar feed. This is the only chelated products we use. Is we're foliar feeding AEA's rebound line, to help balance our like micros, because that's what I found to be the hardest part of living soil, is getting good micro levels in there, and that, in my opinion, is what kind of takes your flower from good to really, really good.
And by that he means mids to top shelf.
Yeah, and so, and also, I'll try not to get too sidetracked here, but hey, sorry, my cat's jumping up here.
What, a cat jumping on a computer? Who
I
would
was
have
like, don't knock
thunk
over
it?
my beer. But also those micro levels are really going to help with pest pressure, right? I use one pesticide and I don't really spray that often. So on a grow the size that we are, you'd think we spray all the time, but
Well, I did want to get into IPM because, man, you've hit so many things I wanted to talk about. I should have been writing them down, but we'll just stick
you're
with
good.
IPM for
Yeah,
now.
you guys, we can go on tangents all you want. I can talk about this stuff for hours. So
I know, and that's the thing. We could probably do a half a dozen episodes with you. Maybe we will.
whenever you guys want.
Friday nights, bro.
Yeah.
IPM. So I I've tried sprays as feeders, as what was the one I used to use that smelled like peppermint? Do you guys remember that? It was really popular. It was all like essential oils.
I do, but I don't remember the name of it.
It was like some weird like robot name, like something like Elon Musk's kid, would be named after or something. But anyways, I've tried to stick to them. Like
Tweetment.
What's that?
Was it Tweetment?
No, I don't recognize that one. But I've tried. I'd have to like dig through an Amazon account or something probably to find it. But not Dr. Bronner's Lick Frogs. That definitely smells like a Dr. Bronner's product, probably. But I've used some sprays before, both feeders, to try to boost some things, or maybe just things that came with my line, nutrients that I was buying. I've done the quote unquote pesticide type stuff. Even like garlic sprays outdoors, right? Like just to keep deer away and rabbits and anything else that might be hating that garlic. But what I've found has been really successful, over the years, but certainly more so in an organic soil type setup, and even more so in a situation in which you're reusing your soil, is predator mites, nematodes, things like that will build, continue their colonies if there's a colony of food. But if there's not, they're just kind of like hanging out, slowly dying off, and it kind of is what it is. But one of the things that's what it is. Method 1 PPS. Thank you, Doug. Hi. It was Method 1.
There you go.
So, if you guys are reusing your soil, and maybe maybe you guys are already doing this, but tell me about like the beneficial bugs that you guys might be introducing, or do you guys use nematodes? Are you guys doing anything like that? Whether preventative or responsive,
Yeah, so we don't use nematodes right now. So the one thing that's really cool about the setup we have here, like when we're talking living soil, man, like this is far beyond most living soil things. We're taking native soil, we're mixing it into our compost, and where'd we all go, huh?
I didn't do that.
But anyways, so
his mouse died.
we're making we take indigenous soil from a mountain that's nearby. Hey, sweetie, come on. That's Ophelia. So there's a mountain nearby I grow. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but we're gonna say it anyways. We go up there and we like scoop up a bunch of soil, and we find mycelium colonies, right? So we're going around down trees and root
actual
systems of
native
trees.
soil. Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah, and so when we first built all of the beds, and the original building, I had no part of this, but the new building I did, because that's when I was here for it. We mixed that into all the compost and soil that we brought into the building. So we have this huge soil food web that's native to the area. So we haven't had the need for any nematodes to be added in yet. Of course, I assume we're probably going to need to at some point. But as of right now, we've only ever had like one issue with any root-borne bug. We had like rice root aphids a year and a half ago. And no amount of nematodes we put in. Yeah, and honestly, you're like, oh, that's like a kill-off for a living soil situation, right? So we couldn't put out a bunch of beneficials for that. So we had to, once we processed the whole grow, luckily we had our other building operational at this time. So we were able to, we didn't have any rice root aphids in there. So we kind of quarantined our old building, put out Bavaria bassiana,
nice.
Drenched in the beds really nicely.
If you don't mind, where did you access the Bavaria bassiana? Like, was there a certain brand or company? It's
like, it was like the WW2P or something like that. I forget what company it was though.
There's a lot of them out there that offer it. I know there's a couple that kind of target our industry. That's why I was asking if
it was a pretty common one, I would say. I just don't remember it off the top of my head. I'm pretty anti-pesticide and stuff like that. I only used it because it's a bacterial focused one, so it's only attacking the bug.
Listen, I have we've had a lot of conversations about Bavaria bassiana on the Michigan Bros Grow Show, and We've had some, I think even on this show we had a I'll call him a scientist that kind of broke it down for us. And it's one of those things where honestly it doesn't seem like it would ever be a problem in an indoor environment. It's when you start introducing it into outdoor environments where you might be affecting a lot of other soft bodied, insects that,
things that
honeybees,
don't need to be killed.
Right. And, and then the, how far that's going to persist, right? It might go further than just the problem you're trying to take care of, right? And so it's kind of like a nuclear option, if you will, but it's nothing like, using Eagle 20 or whatever, you know what I mean? It's a pretty solid option.
Yeah, and I take pesticides very seriously when it comes down to it. We used it, we drenched it 2 or 3 times, that we were supposed to do it over like a 3-week period. Then we saturated the fuck out of the beds until they leached out. And we did that about 2 times before even planting again. And then on top of that, we also cooked the room, right? So we got it up to like 130 in there and like made sure it sat there for about an hour just to kill off anything else that was out and about.
Did you real quick on the cooking the room, because I've done this before and like just basically cooking rooms before you put anything in it. We went pretty hard, and I want to say we got it into like the 120 to 140 range in terms of heat. We cranked the CO2 to the max, so it was in the thousands of ppms for sure, if not maybe 5-digit numbers. And then I also at one point utilized ozone. Have you guys ever used ozone for any kind of like clean room type situations or cleaning up after a?
Yeah, we've thought about it. The issue is that it's killing off all the anything, right? And that it's exposed to air.
Start over.
Yeah, and
again, nuclear, right?
Yeah, and the soil in our original building has been around for 4 years. The soil in our new building sitting at 2 years, and we don't want to take that extreme of a method or like step where everything that we've built on the surface level is also going to die. Because that top soil is very important to us, and so we've never used the ozone. We've talked about it multiple times, but we're just like, we're going to steer away from it. So we have not used it. No. Yeah. But other than that, pesticide wise or IPM wise, beneficials, I really only use, it depends on what I'm seeing at the time. We used to have spider mites, like those red spotted mites, or 2-spotted as our biggest problem. But for the past 1.5 years, I haven't even seen those pop up. So I've been dealing mainly with aphids. So I get aphidious wasps.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's smart.
Yeah, and those get put out week 4 or starting week 2 of flower once we start seeing bud set. And then I put them out every 2 weeks.
I'm gonna pull up a picture of these real quick for everybody. I like sharing bugs like this.
Yep. Yeah, those are the ones. Freaking plant their eggs inside the aphid. It's so cool, man.
Like that. Boom.
Yep.
Nature is metal, mother.
But yeah, on IPM side, the only actual pesticide that we use is Suffoil, Suffoil X, the mineral oil, and I will die on that hill. It's the best pesticide on the planet.
Why? Tell us why, man.
It's a suffocant, right? It's in everyday things that people put on their skin. It's all over.
Hey, I just started growing. I've only had like 2 grows under my belt. What the hell is a suffocant?
It's gonna cover the bug, right, and make it so that it can't breathe, and it's gonna sit on the skin of the bug and just choke it out. Basically, it's gonna suffocate it. So it's usually oil based, or I would say almost every time oil based, and it just coats it. So it has to be in contact with your bug, right? So it's not being absorbed into your plant. It's just covering the bug.
Real quick, just sidebar. You said oil based. Are there any like glycol based insecticides?
I couldn't tell you, man. Like I said, I'm really anti-pesticide. I've got my pesticide applicators license, and I take all these classes and stuff for it. But I try to steer as far away from pesticides as possible.
And more props to you for doing that. I appreciate that, and I'm sure. Well, even if they don't, the people that are smoking, the medicine you produce, do and will and should, you know.
Yeah, I want people to be consciously like can consume it consciously. I don't want to put something out there where I'm like, oh, maybe, you know what I mean? I've used evergreen, pyganic, things like, you know, pyrithian based, azadirachtin based stuff all of the time in hemp, and is a whole different ball game because it's agriculture instead of cannabis, and so you can use way different shit. So that's kind of why I steer clear of pesticides, because of the shit I've used in the past.
The reason I just asked about the like a glycol type situation is just coating a bug. You know, I think it'd be like a big enough. This is going to sound stupid because I'm not a scientist. I took like science 101, maybe, you know, bio 201 or something in college, but like almost like encapsulating it. Maybe it's just like using more than you need to, but it seems like it'd be like this like molecular structure that's bigger than the bug, you know what I mean? Depending on the insect we're dealing with.
Yeah.
It just doesn't separate like oil does.
Yeah, no, glycol will coat the shit out of you. That's
Yeah, I wonder if it would be, you know, it'd be like to the point where it's like never coming off the plants, though.
Right.
You know
That's
I mean?
what I would be worried about.
You have to like wash it off or something. You
I mean,
So
even
have you
getting it
guys
off your
ever-
hand is tough.
Yeah. Have you guys ever used like hot foggers?
Not personally. I've seen them in action, but I've never like you know, operated
So-
them or anything.
When I was working for the hemp company when I first started at 18, we were, you know, we had pest pressure out the ass all the time, right? Because it was a cloning operation. We made sure our clones were clean, but the moms, we were like, fuck it, you know, we're producing hundreds of thousands of clones at the time. If there's a little pest pressure, it is what it is. But we would go in with a hot fogger, and we would, I don't know even know if this was legal or anything, but we would take vegetable glycerin and pyrithium, mix them together in a hot fogger, and I wore like safety shit, you know, respirators and stuff.
I fucking hope so.
Yeah, and everybody else I was with was just out there. We're hot fogging. They're smoking cigarettes.
Bro, who cares about the cigarettes? You made a pyrethrin vape pen, bro.
Yes,
Like,
I know, dude. It was crazy.
I mean, I coat my clothes in that shit and it doesn't come out in the wash.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, we got the fire department called on us a couple times because like we were smoking this whole place out because it was this big greenhouse, and we would walk around with the hot fogger and fill this place up with smoke. You couldn't see like 2 feet in front of your face. But then after an hour
in there.
Yeah, after an hour you got to aerate it, you know. And
I mean, every pyrethrin product I've seen is like 12 hours or something.
yeah,
you
this
can't
place
go back
didn't
in.
really follow the rules, and I was too young and dumb to know the rules at this point.
And
you
they
know?
think the THC side is the problem.
Yeah, right.
These
Hemp-
fucking
Yeah,
hemp growers, I'll tell you what.
hemp was the wild west. I had a lot of fun
Totally.
doing it, but I definitely am glad I made the changeover.
I've told this story before, probably on a different podcast, but I got invited one time to take a look at a hemp farm and a hemp processing facility that needed some help with their capabilities and just the labor and all that stuff, and pulled up to this farm, like legitimate, you know, hemp field farm. And I think they had already harvested at this point. It must have been, you know, kind of getting into winter season or so. And they converted a dairy farm into a hemp farm. And so they had this massive dairy barn, you know, cow barn with nothing in it except in the center of it had this open room, you know, that certainly wasn't a C1D one, with a, you know, one of the biggest pieces of stainless steel processing equipment I've ever seen in person. You know, I think they were doing ethanol washes, trying to extract whatever they were extracting out of the hemp. But you know, like those yard-sized totes that soil come in, and they're like, you know, they like fit on this. They're basically the size of a pallet. You know, if you put like, you know, made a little box of pallets, it's pretty much the size of a yard of soil. They had, if I'm not mistaken, 140,000 pounds worth of hemp in that building that they needed processed, just all in these giant, you know, yard-sized bags that probably were used for something else before hemp. Who knows? But they wanted to hire me to process that, and there was not a chance in hell I was going to get involved with that. But I've never, just like, yeah, you just like, oh, it's a cool big old barn. Doesn't look like there's anything operating that. Nope, 140,000 pounds of hemp inside of there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when I was, the company that I was working with was smart in the hemp boom because they were hitting that green rush. They were all genetics, right? They were like, we'll sell you the cuts, we'll sell you the seeds, but we're not processing any of it. We're not like, we'll sell you this stuff. We got people who can process it. You can sell it back to us at a discounted rate and we'll process it for you. And then we'll sell it back to you. So they had a nice business plan where they didn't actually have to like do anything with the product. They just had to get the genetics out into the field. But I know one of the farms that I worked on in Minnesota, which was a 300-acre farm, we went back to go help harvest and everything. And then we went back the next year to go plant. And their warehouse that they were holding it in was full of all of the shit that they did it. And I was like, why are you guys doing this again? What is the choice? Like, what is the goal here?
What year was this? Was this like 2020 or 2021, something like that?
I think 2019 and 2020.
Okay, so a little early. So they were, they felt it early.
Yep. Yeah. So it was just, the hemp market's wild, man. But it is what it is. There, I think some people can do it well.
I watched all that pass by from a distance here in Colorado, but I am so thankful.
Yeah. Well,
I saw it from the.
Looks like they're trying to close the THCA loophole, though. Now,
I think well, I don't know if they did, but they're definitely trying.
Yeah, I think did it only pass one of the branches? I don't know where. I don't watch the news very much.
Well, I don't either.
I just headlines over here.
So fill me in. Fill me in.
No, I think we'd have to actually like look up an article to fill everyone in here. But
I don't know.
I think what they're saying is, nope, I don't got it. I really don't. But I know they're closing the loophole.
Yeah.
Are we talking about clarifying the legality?
THCA, basically, if it comes from hemp and it's over 0.2% or whatever, right? It's not legal. You know what I mean? So it's not like you can just keep extracting this hemp product and then keep, refining it into some different product and call it still a hemp product. They're like, no, you can't just take 140,000 pounds of hemp and extract that 0.2% THC out of it and combine it all into a 98% THC product. You know what I mean? Like,
well, there's also there's a loophole.
That was just going to try to clarify.
Harvesting, not hemp, but harvesting cannabis early so that it's all THCA before there's any conversion to get them above the legal, and then selling it and it's legal under the hemp law. You
can actually, according to my knowledge, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can actually test the plant's THC content in like week 2 of flower. And that's another loophole that'll allow you to get through because because the content is obviously.
Oh yeah, look at this COA; it's still active from 6 weeks ago. Yeah. Right. People will do anything to create a loophole, but I'm not going to risk that court.
No,
no. There's a lot of people in that market right now, though. It's going to hurt a lot of people.
There is a lot of people in that market.
But will it though? Because I don't think some of them. There's certainly like the MSO types that might be getting involved, right? But like I think there's also a lot of people that are doing it that they don't care if they close the loophole.
Well, then they just go back to black market.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of influencers involved in it right now. That's all of that will stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
Because they're selling it 50 states, cross state lines, putting websites up.
Well, and nothing's stopping anybody from just saying this is a legal hemp product. Like you still have to lab test it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, that the whole process you get like we were taking genetics like across state lines and stuff all the time, and it's like you're kind of sitting there, you're like, man, if we got pulled over right now and a cop came up to us and was like, well, what the fuck is this? It's like, are they going to take all the time to test it? Or 2,
not right then and there. You're going to spend a couple months in probably jail.
We're just going to go to jail. You know what I mean?
I mean, early on, there was the trucker that got pulled over with a truck full of hemp. And it was like Tennessee or Kentucky. somewhere, and they pulled him over, took him to jail, seized it, and it was months before the legal company got their hemp back.
Yeah.
Look at Arizona right now and how Border Patrol is operating down there and just stealing all of the delivery drivers, like the legitimate state legalized delivery services. They're just pulling them over and taking all their shit on their routes to doing deliveries and stuff. And it's like in the hundreds of thousands of dollars a single company has lost in the product to Border Patrol, because they're just like, hey, listen, still federally illegal. We're operating under federal guidelines and policies here. We don't give a shit about your state laws. You know what I mean? It's wild.
Yeah.
It's definitely funny living, like, I see Border Patrol again, and I saw them in Detroit, but then, like, you know, Florida, you don't see Border Patrol when we lived down there.
Bro, they're all over Michigan. You know, we got a lot of open water borders with a whole nother country. I mean, it's our entire state. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's anywhere you go, you're gonna see them around here. Especially if you're like close to the water. I will say that.
That's interesting. I haven't had to spend much time around Border Patrol.
White vans,
I see just as many Border Patrol and Coast Guard as I do actual police here.
That's I believe that 100% for where you're at, man. And yeah, if you go out to Lake St. Clair, you know, I spent some time out there. It's the same thing, man. You do like people down here will recognize like Jobby Nooner and the raft off and stuff. You go out for those types of situations where you're like literally on the border in the open waters, and they're not international waters. There's a border, but you're right on that border. And so you will have like 9 different agencies out there, everyone from Homeland Security to about 3 different county sheriffs to the Coast Guard to, you know, the Canadian Royal Mounted Police to the freaking, and maybe not the Navy, but just about, you know what I mean? It's like, I've seen Coast Guard ships out there that are hundreds of feet long just for a party, I guess. I don't, you know, it's wild.
Well, Jobby Nooner does get pretty wild. I mean, to be fair,
it's a regular old shit show.
Yeah.
I'm in good landlocked Colorado. I don't have border patrol up here at all. So
just a dry, arid environment. Tell us about that, man, because we here in Michigan will go from literally 74 degrees and sunny to 28 degrees and snowing in the same day. I've seen it before, multiple times. We have humidity swings from 20% to 100%, also sometimes in the same day. We have 4 seasons. We have lake effects. You know, we've got a little bit of elevation, not like you guys, but, you know, enough to kind of like swing some weather around the state and whatnot. How do you guys deal with the weather you have, and what is it like?
You know, I would say when it comes to like climate control, especially in a greenhouse setting, there's almost like the perfect environment to grow, because if you're in an indoor setting, greenhouse, whatever, all you need is a humidifying system, good exhaust fans, a good setup, right? Because I can set it to whatever humidity I want, and I can maintain that humidity perfectly fine.
But most people right now are like, did he just say a dehumidifier? Is he talking about an and in their quest or something? Or did he say a humidifier? What's happening?
Well, you know, so we got a fog coast system, right? It's set up in all of our rooms. It's up on the top of our grow, and it just spits out micronized water throughout the whole building, and it shuts off at whatever set point I want it to shut off at, turns on at whatever set point. Which is
approximately what percentage?
Depends on the time, right, that I'm in, but you know, give or take 65, right? So it kind of depends on what VPD I'm looking for. And each stage kind of wants a different VPD. But I found kind of if I'm looking for just giving out advice, if you keep it around 65, 75% and you're sitting in that 75 to 82 range on temperature, you're going to be pretty good, right? So you can go into all the minute details and drop it down by 2% on your humidity to get the perfect VPD on your early veg, and then your late veg, you would increase it. But, you know, you can do all that stuff. And we do kind of get into that a bit up at the grow. But 65 to 75% humidity. Yeah.
You know what? This is one of the things I love about VPD, and I've experienced this myself. It's a greater risk, greater reward, because at higher temperatures and higher humidities, in my experience, I have more problems, not better weed, right? And it's like
Yeah.
because of potential, whether it's potential dehumidification failures of, all of a sudden we got powdery mildew over the weekend, or it's, maybe the plants just aren't, the strains that grow aren't right for that environment or whatever it might be. It's like, yes, I know everyone agrees and the science agrees that that's going to get you a better product in the end. But I swear, I'm just not taking the risk. I'm going to keep it at pretty much maximum. Realistically, maximum 68% humidity. But yeah, I'm trying to target that 65. So that low end of humidity versus that 75. But I'm also not operating in that 80-degree range. I'm operating in that kind of lower mid 70s range. And that's just what works for me.
Yeah,
And
when
you
he
know
said
what?
75, I shit myself a little bit.
Well, it's all set up, right? Like
Yeah, right.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to
You
go
gotta
tell a
trust your
home
equipment.
grower.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go tell a home grower who's like people. My friends come up and ask me, they're like, "Hey, I'm starting my first grow. What do you recommend?" I give them
20% humidity and 60 degrees.
Yeah, I'm giving them baseline information, right? I don't think they have massive exhaust fans that can replace the air in your grow in 65 seconds, right? I've got these massive rooms that can replace air in a minute, 2 minutes, right? The whole room, right? So if I have a spike in humidity in a minute, it's completely different, right? And I saw a question come up about humidity 70%. I'm not doing that in flour, right? So I dropped that down a good bit in flour. So we're sitting at about like 55% in
Oh,
flour.
perfect.
And
Oh,
Okay.
wow. Okay.
and sometimes even further, depending on how tall my plants are, right? Because the
Okay.
misting system I have is
Right.
pretty high
I'm clean
pressure, and if I have 6-foot tall plants, it's going to get all over the plants. So I'll drop it down even further to like it'll turn on at 30, but it's not going to dehumidify until 55, right? So, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. Oh,
No,
I
you
was just
first.
you made me think about the pressures, like air pressures and whatnot. And I've been learning a little bit about like, I don't know, just flying airplanes and how that whole thing works. And it led me to this like app that shows you all of the potential things that it could affect flight at your GPS coordinations at the time. And one of the things that came up a few weeks ago, and well, first of all, I'm looking at all these things, and it's like temperature, wind, humidity, like a lot more than that, but like all those things that affect the grow, right? And one of the things on that list that came up a few weeks ago was I actually don't know how they measure it, what the measurement is called rather, but it's solar flares and like the magnetism and all that. And that can affect like GPS and all this stuff, right? But I'm like, I wonder if something like that, as as minute of a time it is, could have an effect on plant growth or plant life or anything like that. I mean, let alone humans and all that and GPS and all these electronic things. But I'm like, if we had like an extended solar flare that was giving us northern lights as far south as Florida for months at a time, like would that affect growing plants? I don't know. I'm just total
Probably.
And what do you
I
have
don't know
any
if it would
like
be
idea
enough
in what
light.
way?
Well, I mean, it may not
I'm not
like
saying the
light
light.
purpose.
Yeah, I'm not saying the
Magnetism of
northern
its-
lights. I'm saying like all the other like kind of unseen effects, right? Like
It
you
might
could
be so
feel
minute
humidity,
you
but you can't
can't.
see it.
Yeah, it might be
Well,
so
sometimes
tiny
you
you can't measure it. But I would imagine, it's like, it's all connected. You know what I mean? It's
It seems
everything
like it.
works. Yeah, everything works in a specific way on Earth and everything like that. So those kind of at like abnormal situations have got to have somewhat of an impact. It may not be noticeable, but it's got to change something.
Well, and then I'm like, well, it's certainly we get this on like this 3-year cycle of these solar stressors that affect our weather, right? And so like maybe it's one of those things that maybe it doesn't directly affect the plant growth themselves like directly, but maybe it affects so many things surrounding it that yeah, it's actually having a huge bigger impact than we realize,
Mm-hmm.
Total like tinfoil hat type thought there, but
Okay, I'm here for it.
Well, keep in mind it's affecting GPS because GPS is in space. and you're seeing the aurora because the particles are being deflected around the Earth from our magnetic. It's not getting to us, because if it did, it would be ripping our cells to pieces. Like we wouldn't be worried about our plants because we would be fucking dead.
That's what I'm saying. I know it's going to affect humans, but like, does it affect plants? But yeah, I think it's more like the ancillary effects that it has, like on the, maybe we're having like seems like we're having some wild weather right now.
Yeah, weather's been insane this year. Well,
I mean, from Michigan to Texas, bro, like they just, I got friends down in Houston.
The first time ever the Weather Service used the term DVD-sized hail. It was the first time in history.
Wow.
Bigger than softball. It's DVD. Who can relate to a DVD nowadays, people?
That's what I thought. I thought, first off, that's a very weird term to use.
How about like a dodgeball or like a...
Hey, man, I'm 25. I know what a DVD is.
But they said 4 to 5 inches was the measure for DVD-sized hail.
But do you know what a CD is, Matthew?
Yeah, I have a case in my car. I've got the folder.
Really?
Yeah.
I love it, dude. I love it.
Man. All right. I'm gonna take it. We're going history here. There's a bunch of stoners here in chat, and I want to fucking know too. I want to know when your first time getting high was, and tell me about it.
Who, me? Who wants to go first? Anybody?
You.
You're
we've
all
yeah,
the guest.
We've been here. Yeah.
Okay. I was 12.
Wow.
Yeah, I started real young, man. Real young. I fell in love with weed at a very young age, right?
Right.
So the fact that I don't smoke now, it's like it's kind of weird to me. I always thought I was going to smoke all the time, forever and ever, and I still do indulge every once in a while. But I started when I was 12. I was at a skate park with some friends, and we were like, "Yo, actually, no, there was a time before that. I was with my buddy Chris Varga. I was still 12, and we stole weed from his brother, who's in high school, and he had the Gatorade bong, right?
Dude, it's
Gatorade
always
bong.
the older brother, I swear.
Yep. So he had the Gatorade bong, and it had the fucking pen and the tin foil in it, and it was like fucking brown, disgusting water. And we stole it, and it was middle of winter. And this guy and I are still friends today. We smoked a bowl, and then we went on a walk. There's this lake right next to his house, and there's all this snow out on the basketball court. And like, he was sitting there, he's like, "Man, I'm not really feeling it." He's like, "I don't understand why people do this." And I'm laying in the snow making snow angels, going like, he's like, "How are you doing?" I was like, "I think I'm gonna smoke forever, man." And that was like word for word the first thing I said out of the whole situation. And then we got our ass kicked because he was like, we took the like little itty bit of weed, but this was, I don't even know, it was early 2000s or 20. Let me do the math here. 2010. So not early 2000s, 2010.
We got a young buck. You got to be the youngest guest on this show, bro.
Yeah, I think so.
I'm not, I get it. I'm a child basically.
You're good.
But
Got some shit under your belt here though.
I've got a kid older than him.
Hey, I get that a lot, and we got our asses kicked later because we were hanging out, and he came home from whatever the fuck he was doing, and he goes, "Who the fuck stole my weed?" And we were like, "How the fuck does this guy even know?" And then he kicked the shit out of us. And then the next time I smoked was the one I was telling before. I went to a skate park, bought some weed. I gave this guy like $30. We all pitched together. We got a bowl's worth of flour.
Oh man.
And then they smoked with us. We were still 12 at the time, and they smoked with us. So they smoked the weed with us, sold the weed to us, overcharged the fuck out of us. And I didn't know until I was like 15. I was like, those motherfuckers, man, they stole my fucking money basically, and they smoked my goddamn weed.
And that was always the trick in the hood too. You go and you buy a bag, and then they're like, "Well, you're gonna burn one with me?"
Yeah,
oh, man.
I guess.
Yeah. Now that you said it, I got to, because otherwise I'm a dick.
Well, and I didn't even know the common courtesy back then. I didn't know right is tight, left is law. It's like I didn't know you could say no to that kind of shit. I was like fucking 12 years old buying weed for the first time ever. And I was like, oh, this is just what you do. This guy knows what he's doing. And honestly, he was pretty chill. Like, he was being a nice guy. He was probably fucking 18 years old or something, hanging out at the skate park selling weed to 12-year-olds. So hindsight, not that fucking cool, but
bought himself an ounce and made himself a couple hundred.
Yeah.
Probably stole it from his dad. You know,
Give me
what I mean? Like,
1 second. I gotta turn my air off. I'll be right back.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
I think it's about to be dab time, gentlemen. I've been sitting here and I dabbed. I took a dab before the show even started, and I've been high ever since. It's the newest edition of my garden, guys. It's ready and it's finally processed. I did a double drop pheno hunt, if you will, for 2024, and got that raspberry parfait, which was a huge hit at a Hash Bash Cup. It's got that, the reason I bought it is because it was very dominant in terpenoline, and the flavor is definitely sort of similar to like a strawberry raspberry parfait. It's kind of got that little bit of a sour taste in there, but it's also like that milky smooth flavor, but it's not like Cobra Milk smooth. It's not milky, I don't know how to describe it other than that, but super, super good, great effects. Really reminded me of the lime skunk effects, to the point even which people had asked me if it had lime skunk in it. I'm like, no, this isn't a combo. This is its own strain, The newest one that I popped at the same time, I just didn't clone, or no, I didn't transplant early enough, and things got put off, and it dragged behind. And here we are, like almost 3 months later, I guess 2 months later, harvested and processed the squirt. And it is, the reason I chose that one is because for a long time, ever since I was growing grapefruit Durban, which I no longer have and haven't had in a long time, I really miss that terpene profile. And as silly as it is to talk about shatter, it was the best shatter I've ever made. And it's just such a crazy racy high, and which I like. I know a lot of people don't like, but I like. And so I was like, yeah, a grapefruit strain, looking for that flavor profile. Squirt happened to claim that it was. And I was so blown away when I was doing the pour off, because it smelled exactly like lime skunk. And I'm like, like, this might be so, I mean, it was skunky. It was like, it had that BO smell to it,
Love
and
that.
I'm like, this might be too close. You know what I mean? Where it's just like, I don't need to replace lime skunk or anything, so. But then I whipped it, I tried it, and the second dab is the one I did before the show, and I can confirm that it smells like lime skunk, but it very much tastes like a fresh Florida grown grapefruit. And it's got that kind of sour, tangy punch to it. And it is very much a racy high. So this was just a combo of the phenos from seed. You know what I mean? I had 5 that I popped. 2 of them are for sure no go. 2 of them are pretty similar, and one of them is very much just a totally different standout like looking plant. I just don't know that it's a keeper, but I am going to keep pushing on those other 3 phenos, do another round or 2, see if I can't hone in, really dial in the strain itself in my environment and kind of see which one succeeds, see which one is the best terpene profile, and narrow it down to one. But I'll have that available this coming weekend at Michigan Gems and Genetics, and there's not much, and it's going to go quick. But I think I'm going to do a second run, because I do have some left over, and I happen to have some lime skunk, so I might just do a little bit of a squirt o lime or something and see what that combo looks like.
Combo.
Yeah, man. Yeah, because it smells so similar, and the effects are, you know what I mean. I would say more like Clementine's more of a racy high than lime skunk is. Lime skunk's not very racy. It's more like a wake and bake, just get shit done. You know what I mean? Like focus and work and whatever you're gonna do, clean the house, fucking do some gardening, whatever it is. Clementine's more like a up in the cerebral realm of like, am I gonna have a panic attack or not? And that's kind of what this one feels like. It just smells like lime skunk. It's so wild to me.
I haven't heard about Clementine in such a long time. I miss that genetic, man.
I still got it, dude. I've been growing it for almost 8 years now. I won the 2019 High Times Sativa Cannabis Cup, the concentrates, here in Detroit with it. And
that's a good one.
Yeah, man, it's fantastic. It's a standout. It's a standout, and I love orange chirps. I know a lot of people think they're overplayed and overdone and been around too long.
Fuck that. I
hope
love
they
them.
go away, but yeah,
It's
bro,
my
like,
favorite.
yeah,
See, I'm not a big orange guy, but like I can respect a good genetic no matter what the terp is. Like I don't necessarily like smoking clementine or anything like that, but it's killer. It's such a good plant.
So
Yeah,
walking
that's-
down that road, we were talking about the hash, and I want to get to the terpene profiles as well. But when was your first time smoking hash? What was your introduction to the concentrate world? And
Uh,
what's your obviously, but what's your preference?
I think freshman year of high school was my first time taking a dab. And it was
what a
fucking
time to grow up in, bro. Like that didn't exist when I was in high school, you know.
Hell
yeah,
no.
no, I feel like I grew up in like a golden age of cannabis, right? And I was also it was legal for me, so I like not legal for me to smoke, but like I could have the aspiration of being a professional grower
Hell yeah, dude.
at a young age.
That's so cool.
That
But
is crazy.
shit was like black, right? Fucking black shatter. And I was like fucking nervous. I was like, man, I don't, because freshman year of high school is when I really started smoking. Like before then, I smoked a little bit. I was still, a little kid, and I was like smoked maybe once or twice a year. But freshman year, I started smoking a whole lot, and one of my friends, she came out with some hash, and she's like, "All right, who wants to take a dab on a little glass nail with the dome? You know, those ones."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and you take them on and off, and
yeah.
so it was fucking black, and I feel like everybody is like, "Oh, I've never taken a dab before," and so they fucking scoop up like this fat glob
Yeah.
of and like this was shit. You know what I mean? Like fucking garbage, black.
Turning the nail black and
Yeah,
Nummy
like it was
numb.
disgusting, and I didn't know what it was supposed to look like because it was my first time ever even hearing about it.
Making it
And
sound great.
oh yeah, and so she hits it on there, fucking nails red hot still,
Oof.
and it was at my freshman my high school girlfriend's house, and
night
her,
night.
and I'm not night. I was in the kitchen just dying, for like 30 minutes, and then after I got my lungs back, I was like, "So are we gonna go get some pizza or something?" Just hit with the munchies hard. But
Nice.
I've always been a flower person, unless I can get like high quality hash. Because once I hit 15, I started growing, and then I was like actually got to learn about cannabis and met a guy who was like, hey, like I started buying only from this one guy who grew his own weed, and then I got into growing with him and started to learn about it, and so I really got into flower, and I'm still very much into flower. Like if I had the option of what I could smoke, it would just be top notch flower all the time. Nice joint, rolled up. That's what I like to smoke. Um, and it's mainly just because I don't like the fucking smack in the face kind of high off of a dab. I also like the social aspect of a joint or a blunt. You sit there, you're sitting down, like if the four of us were all sitting together, I'd be rolling a joint, we'd be chatting, we smoke the joint, we pass it around, and so it's like I like that aspect of it. Far like hash, it's got its place. I had a phase where I was really into it, buying like an ounce a week, and it's when I had Connect to get rosin all the time. But I've actually never even made hash other than like hashish out of keef. So I'm not a hash guy at the end of the day. Um, but we make hash at where I work. But it's just
You want to take it for girly or?
yeah.
Well, you mentioned the word hashish, so now we've got to ask.
Okay.
Could you please define the word hash for us and what it means to you?
I mean, it's a hash. I would almost say it's a spectrum of a word almost, but it's got to be, in my opinion, hash is either rosin, that pressed, or hashish, right? So hot water, rolling out the keef, concentrating it out, getting it nice and kind of gummy and delicious. But I would say that
So it's got to be a heated
no, because
form?
you can do cold too. I mean,
Okay.
bubble hash technically, I would say falls into that hash category.
You said rosin and like the traditional hashish, like where you're rolling it out. So I didn't know if you meant rosin, like as in like only pressed, or if the like solventless bubble hash kind of
No,
played
well,
into
so we do solventless at our up where we are with Pedro and I. So solventless falls into that category. You know, it's pressed with with some heat. I don't really know the whole process there. I don't know if I can really give a definition on hash because I've never made it aside from
You
doing.
can. That's
Yeah.
that's kind of what we're
Well,
Yeah,
asking.
And
you
that's
know?
the beauty of it is what do you think of when you
That's
hear
the other.
hash?
Yep, that's the other part of it. Yep.
yes,
Yeah.
and dude, you are responsible for the sole ingredient that goes into it, and
Yeah.
this is kind of the caveat here. Is like I've heard a lot of people talk about how processing is so much more fun, you know, after they've been growing for so long. And I think there's something to that because it's like opens up this whole new world and almost like breaks it down from a different perspective. Now,
Mhm.
I think that we need good growers. Like we can't have everyone be trying to like move on to hash, right? We got to have some, the people that focus and fine tune their skills and the countless variables, probably more so that go into growing than processing. But I hear that often, and it doesn't matter which like kind of way you lean in terms of the area you want to work, whether it's in the lab or in the grow room. But I think it's very helpful to have the perspective of both sides of it, and whether or not you smoke it, because ultimately, what you're growing might be growing for hash, right? Like you might not be growing for flour, you might be growing for an end product that is completely different. Have you experienced that, like as a specific, like, okay, we're not growing just to grow grade A flour, we're growing to grow hash? Have you dealt with that before? And if not, I mean, how would that change things up for you?
Well, this is my first place to grow for hash, so I haven't experienced it before, and it actually wasn't a hash grow when I first got on. When I first got on, it was still flower focused. Um, the guy before me convinced the owners to transition into hash, which was the best decision for the company, just with the way the market is. But in reality, to me, there's not a huge change in my growing style for smokable flower to hash production, right? So, like, main difference for me is plant size, weight per plant, because I'm not trying to grow these massive monsters. Um, and I'm not doing this crazy lollipopping, right? If I'm growing smokable flower, I want big ass fucking colas. That's all I want, right? I just want big, massive soda can forearm sized nugs. In hash, I'm not too worried about it. So I'm not really changing day to day, like the method into which I'm growing. I'm changing the stress techniques. I would never like scrog, at least now, I haven't really trialed it out just with the scale. I would probably never scrog out one plant to grow for hash, because that means I'm taking potential of all the light. I'm making larger nugs everywhere, so I wouldn't really do that, at least from my perspective for hash. I think that sea of green style for you know quarter, maybe a quarter pound per plant, 2 ounces to 3 ounces per plant of flour is almost hitting that sweet spot for us to get good production, but also good yields on flour weight.
Can you translate that into per light? Because a lot of people are growing different size plants, right? So if we have how many plants per light, we're growing 2 ounces per plant or so.
Fuck, maybe 84 grams per light.
Okay.
That was
Maybe.
quick.
I think it's around there. It might be a little less. Um, it's give or take, I would say, on that. I couldn't tell you an exact number for sure, but I think our goal is,
That was pretty
you know,
quick, Pedro.
around like I would say around 84 is kind of what we're looking for. But it's
I don't
also
even do math that fucking quick, man. That was
This guy,
I did it a long time ago,
yeah.
and I know the numbers around there.
Well, it's
right?
yeah, and that helps you set goals and targets and all.
Yeah, and what we've found is for us is it's better for us to kind of look at it as like weight per bed is kind of what we're looking at. Because just when we broke it down by light, we're like, okay, this is kind of meaningless for us. Um, but if you're doing it on a smaller scale, it kind of makes more sense. Large scale for us, it's kind of what are we growing square footage, right? How much canopy space and how much weight do we produce that way, you know? So that's kind of the way we look at it. You know, and it kind of works out to be somewhat similar with the amount of lights we have to be similar square footage weight to, you know, per light. So it's probably it's a little higher per light, but you know, it's kind of similar.
It's cool that you mentioned the change of the growth style, even if minimally, um, and it also brings to light that it, you know, generally as a home grower, Budsy here for Growly or myself, you know, we would be the grower and the processor, you know, and in a 14,000 plant grow, that's just not possible.
Yeah.
So the necessity becomes you and I meeting so that we can become the one. You know, we can become the grower and the processor and put our brains together, and then you can change your plant count. You can change your plant style. You can change your plant. You can change everything. You know, because we talk about it. We can we can even go as far as culling plants because they're not producing. You know, of course, we can go back and forth with the data over the years, and we can cull plants. You know, we can grow for the sativa or indica per the the requests from the industry.
Sativa or indica.
Yeah, we can grow per terpene profile. You know, because that's obviously a big driving factor. You know, for a particular cultivar. Having said that, what do you prefer in a terpene profile?
Fucking disgusting.
Yeah,
You know, like cheese. I
like
like a
what?
nice, like that UK cheese, like that royal cheese. Oh, the blue cheese, yum, delicious. Real classic, old school strain dumpster. You know, like sour diesel stuff that when you smell it, it's like kind of disgusting. Like
I
if it
like the
wasn't
wedding
weed,
pie. Our wedding pie is pretty
yeah, the wedding
nasty.
pie's got some
Chem
funk to it. Yeah, the
dog.
chem dog's killer. Right. I'm not a big fruit guy. I don't mind them, right? And also most of my experience comes from commercial so my opinion doesn't really matter at the end of the day for what I'm growing. Like one of my favorites would be our marshmallow OG, which we've washed once, and it washed like shit. But that terpene was just fucking, you know,
Explain
fucking.
it.
I don't know, Pedro. Like, how would you? I don't get to grow it that often because we don't produce a lot of flower.
Take your bias out of it when it comes to the volume, Pedro, and just strictly think about that terpene profile and what kind of hash it produced. Not the volume, just the terps.
I mean, I do remember it being pretty raunchy.
It was a long time ago.
That's why I'm like,
Like a year ago.
It was a minute ago. If I remember correctly, I liked it as well. We were just upset with the production.
Because didn't it wash below 1%?
Yeah, it was horrible.
Like a super greasy one.
One of those super greasy ones.
Yeah, I mean it's like fucking, you know, fucking wet.
Matthew, that is the type of strain I grow, and I don't know what it is. It's the citrusy, hazy, whatever type plant. But I've had similar experiences where I've washed, I think it was close to 900 or right around 900 grams of fresh frozen and got like a quarter ounce of hash back off my clementine. And I suspect that lime skunk would do a similar thing, if not even worse, because of how just absolute greasy it is. Every time you brush up against it, it's like
I would love to take a cut of your clementine and put it through my environment where I've been tweaking my growing to harden trichomes. That's been my goal. And so they wash better. That's been what we're looking for. And just see if we can do anything with it. Could be interesting.
I mean, I've been telling you for months how I want to bring all my shit up there and wash it, but growing it's a whole different story.
Right.
Yeah, putting it in. I mean, because then you get a side by side of yours versus mine, and we can look at them under the microscope and see what the difference in the ends of the heads look like. Look at the actual cells.
Yeah, and I don't know if you guys do this, just talking about like technique changes to kind of increase washing. I feel like everybody probably drops their temp at the end, right? You know, kind of mimic nature, drop it to kind of fall temps. I've been taking it down to like 60 degrees at the end,
Bring out those
55.
colors.
Yep,
Perps.
fucking beautiful fall colors, right?
Yeah.
And Pedro I would imagine he can speak to this as well. The last cycle that we did in our newer building, we had a big jump on our washing, and it was the first time I dropped down below like 64 degrees on consistency, and we had a pretty high jump in washing weight. So, I think there's definitely things that can be done, but I also think that at least now that I've been growing flower for hash, I think there's some strains that just don't ever get there. Like, and
Oh, for sure.
and I wish that some days I'm like, I wish I was growing at home for hash, because like if I could grow that marshmallow G for hash all the time,
Mhm.
I would smoke hash every fucking day.
Right? It's fucking worth it to,
Yeah.
to just
That's-
take the hit on certain things because
That's why I don't care what my yield ever is. I love
Yeah.
it. And I
Exactly.
pop from seed because I
Mhm.
like the variation,
Yeah, and see, like, so on the commercial end, I don't get that. I don't get to do that. You know what I mean? It's
Yep.
like
But
it
if
doesn't.
you could, Matthew, if you could,
Yeah.
give me your top 5 in terms of priorities, and if you could try to prioritize them in aspects of what you're looking for in a plant, if you were to choose it to grow, maybe for 2, 3, 10 years, consistently propagating it throughout your own home grow, right? So we're
Yeah.
talking everything from volume to terp profile to color to ease of trim to, I don't want to give you all of them, but like, what can you categorize the most important down to maybe number 5 if you can get there?
Yeah, so I mean, on the top of my list would be the marshmallow OG all day, because it's like my
So
terp
is
profile.
that terp profile or effect?
Terp profile for sure.
Okay,
I mean,
so
I like
terps
the
are number
effect
1.
of it. It's more of a mellow high, but I don't even think I got to smoke the rosin, but I've got to smoke the flower. So,
Okay,
so I mean, it barely
which is
produced
your
any rosin.
preference? So
Yeah,
yeah,
so marshmallow G is great terp. It's not a super high yielding plant, but it's one of those plants that has a really special terp profile that you just don't get to see very often. So like the low yielding aspect of it and the not great washing aspect of it, I think is blown out of the window by the actual terp, because it's just like, holy fuck, this tastes amazing.
just worth it.
Yeah. Um, and then I'd definitely go with the Chem Dog that we have. I think it's great. I also really like the smoke on it. It's good quality, nice yield. That's probably more of like number 3, really, because it's kind of middle of the pack. I think it's really good, but it's also nothing crazy. I think it's really good, but it's like there's some other really special ones. Um, One that we have that I don't get to grow a lot: Animal Cookies crossed with Cherry Lime Skittles. We don't have a name for it,
Okay,
and it doesn't wash well. It yields really nicely for smokable, and it's got really nice color, really nice smell, really nice terp, and
tell me about the terp profile, bro, because that sounds fantastic.
it's citrusy for sure with a
Okay,
slight funk. Like, I would say the
like a rotten
cookies,
cherry.
not really rotten cherry. It's kind of
Okay.
like we've got this Tropbanana that's kind of like a baby diaper banana. So it's got
Dude,
like
the
this,
baby shit. That was
yeah.
sweet pig pie.
So it's kind of got like a shitty. It's so weird to say. It's kind of got like a
I
baby
get it.
shit smell, but it's got heavy like cherry notes to it. And I would love if Pedro ever got to watch it, but he probably will never get to see it up there. But it's just like it's this really special. I'm really a terp guy. I'm less of an effects guy. It's a really special terp that I've never seen before, where it's got cherry, it's got
Let me see the
lime.
flower. I'll convince him.
Next time I grow it, I'll get it up to you. We've
I'll
watched it
convince him.
before, very small quantity, and it was just like it was another one that was like below 1%.
Dude,
but
I gotta say about the baby shit terps, or pooping, as Weezen was saying. Dude, sweeping pie, like it was the fastest saucing up like extract I've ever seen. Like in 24 hours, it would be fully like sauced up, like full THCA crystals on the bottom. It was just wild. But the terpene profile, there's a couple people that called it like baby shit, like shitty baby diaper, something like that. And I laughed because I could get that funk like at that time.
Mhm.
but I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old now, dude, and that terp is not for me anymore.
That's fair. I mean, my taste might change when I
Enjoy
eventually
it
have
while you
children.
can. Is all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
This came up a couple weeks back, I think, and it's like a few molecules of that terpene alone will completely shift the profile of whatever it's put with. It's like one of the strongest. And trying to look it up again, what it's called.
That
I just googled poop terpene.
0.03%
That's
takes
not
over.
not.
I also think with living soil, what I've experienced is that funk, that raunchy, is on more of the nose. Like it's more forefront than most of the other terps. So like if you get a real raunchy smelling genetic, I've found growing it living soil fucking hits. Like even genetics that don't really have that rotten smell, a little bit of a funk comes out of it every time. It like even our chopped cookies, there's not much funk there, but I've smoked that out of salts and I've smoked it out of ours, and it's a little different. It's kind of got a little bit more of almost a richness. Maybe it's the earthy notes that you get out of it all, but um, that's just kind of what I've experienced there. And maybe Pedro can speak to that as well. But um, number 4, Chanel.
Not
Which
familiar.
no, okay. So I mean, this may
Is
not.
this Chanel number 5?
It I think it may have been named that, but it was this black market strain that it was the same guy I was buying the Clementine from. He had the Chanel, and who knows, it may not have been what it is, but it's what I was like. It's what it was called, and I've looked all over the place for it because I love to grow it. But it was like this floral, perfumey kind of just almost the best way to describe it is almost sexy. It's a weird thing to say about weed, but it had like this like very like, oh, I want to smell like this flower.
Not potpourri, right? Not like spicy, more and not
Like
sweet either, right?
yeah, it was like rich,
floral.
yeah,
Yeah.
rich and floral, and like it wasn't super loud or anything like that, but it had this just fucking, I don't know, like this fucking.
The way you're describing this to me, Matthew, I'm surprised it's not number 1.
Well, it's because
Right.
I would say it's not number 1 because I haven't smoked it in like 6 years probably.
Oh,
So
shit,
I
okay.
can't consciously
Yeah.
put it at number 1 because I'm like my taste profiles could change.
But the fact that you remember it and it's still up in that top 5 that far down the road,
Yeah.
that says something.
Yeah, so like I've looked for it for a very long time. And then number 5 is a little bit harder for me because then it's kind of less of like holy shit moments for me, but more of like what I'd smoke day to day. If I just had something around and if it's like, oh, I
Daily
could never
driver.
complain about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it's kind of like a tie for the Divine Kush Breath that I've been running, which I really enjoy. And Sour Diesel.
Oh, well. How is there a competition there? Because I mean, the breaths I've never grown them, but I processed quite a few different versions of them.
Hmm.
But to compare that to a sour diesel, I mean, it must be pretty good. Tell us about. I mean, well, I'm gonna make you talk about sour diesel last. So let's
Yeah.
talk about this breath one.
Well, the Divine Kush Breath for me, it's another one of those unique ones, but not very because it's more just super gassy, right? And I would say it's
Mhm.
probably hitting up there for me because I feel like, especially, I don't know how it is in other states, but in Colorado, fucking people just don't like gas anymore. And
Everybody's about that
Really?
sweet,
yeah, sweet, fruity,
sweet,
candy,
sweet,
fucking
sweet. Yeah.
bullshit. It's not bullshit. I just am
I
not the
love
biggest
it,
fan.
but
Yeah,
yeah,
so
it's
like
true.
people like it. It's just not my cup of tea, right? And
Dude, that's
especially
where my Clementine came from. Was
yeah,
Colorado. It's one of the few strains I didn't like pheno hunt myself.
yeah, and like I guess it's not bullshit or anything, but I just being a flower guy, I feel like fruit terpenes just don't translate as much in flower.
It's true.
You
I
It's
know,
true.
can agree
so
with that.
Fucking true, bro.
I
so
agree
like
with that.
whenever I get a fruity strain and I'm smoking it, I'm like, it doesn't fucking taste like banana, It doesn't taste like
That's why I've
orange.
always said it fucking tastes like burnt fucking flour.
Yeah, so like it just doesn't
Tastes
have
like
that.
fucking weed.
Yeah, and so I feel like for me, gas in flower is way more. It comes through way harder. It like really fucking hits. Um, and the Divine Kush Breath came through when I had like no gas in the genetic library at Eden. There was just all fruit and all sweet, candy, sweet, just fruity stuff, which is great and it's
I didn't
trendy.
do it.
Is what Yeah, I know you didn't do it, but it's just the guy before me. It's just kind of what sells, right? So, but the Divine Kush Breath was like the one genetic I had that was fucking gas. And when you opened up a cured bag of it, like you open it up and people fucking you turn your head looking at it because it's just so loud like that. And that's also kind of what I feel about the sour diesel. It's just got a different terpene. It's a little more sour with some gas. It's a little tart, but it's not fruity by any means. It's kind of got a raunch with some sourness to it. And you open up that bag and like fucking everybody looks over in your direction when it's done right.
Mhm.
So that's kind of why they're on the same playing field for me. It's because I think that I could smoke both of those every single day and never be upset with it.
Do any of those top 4 that you mentioned turn heads when you open the bag?
Yeah, I mean the Chem Dog's pretty fucking loud. And sadly, the thing is for a lot of these, the most the animal cookies cherry lime Skittles, that one's a head turner, right?
Seems like
Like
it would be.
if I could, like, the sad thing with where, since I'm a flower guy, I don't get to produce a whole lot of flower. Um, we're kind of slowly getting there, but we're doing edibles first, and down the line we're going to produce more flour. But that animal cookies cherry lime Skittles is probably one of the more special ones on the list. And the marshmallow G2, that one is a loud fucking pack. When, like, if I could give that out to people, and I've given it out to some people, we've made some joints of them, and everybody really really likes that one. So that one's super pungent as well.
So I appreciate that you broke that down. That was incredible, giving us not only really the top 5, but a tie. So for just like 6 strains and really breaking down the strains themselves. My next question though is, can you do the same thing for not a specific strain, but as a grower, what you're looking for in terms of just what you want to grow? So the aspects of the plant. So all those things that you mentioned, whether it's loud, it's sticky, it washes well,
Yeah,
the effects. But think about all those things as a grower too. So maybe it's finicky, it's a heavy feeder,
Hmm.
it's a bitch to trim, it just wants to go 11 weeks, like all those things. Do you have a kind of top 5 list of kind of importance of what you're looking for in terms of keepers for you? And if if you had the final say in what strains you
Yeah.
were going to keep around?
Are you asking me as a professional grower, commercial scale, or
Ooh,
home grower?
great point, dude. Let's
Good
go
for
home
you.
grower first, since we're
Okay.
talking about your favorites, but I also want to know commercial, because personally, that's what I'm more interested in, is like the business aspect of it.
Uh-huh.
But it's probably more important that you share your personal feelings.
I mean, they're pretty similar to me, I guess. At the end of the day, maybe not really. But home grow, right? Like, do you want? Let me clarify one more thing. Do you want strains or just what I'm looking
No,
for
I
out?
I want aspects of any plant it might be. So like
Okay.
maybe you're really discriminatory toward broadleaf varieties, right? And you
Uh-huh.
just want nothing to do with them.
Okay. Gotcha.
Like I
Gotcha.
just the aspect, like the phenotypic expressions,
Yeah.
length of flowering, feeding, like all that kind of stuff.
Okay. So I'll get this out of the way first. I don't trim. So as my home grow, I do not trim. Um, so I don't really care if it's I'll defoliate. That's it. But I'm looking for. I prefer indica leaning. I like more mellow high body high, so I prefer an indica leaning plant. I like big pretty nugs. I don't want any small tiny nugs. I want shit that's forearm sized.
Donkey dicks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
donkey dick. Like, I've always
Nice
wanted to grow
big
donkey
nugs
dick.
and cannot lie.
Yeah. So, a I like indica leaning, but I also like a challenge, especially at home, right? So I feel that a lot of the time you end up with a more challenging plant in the sativa kind of leaning category because they tend to be slightly heavier feeders and they tend to be a little bit more finicky with environment and shit like that. But with that being said, everything's a fucking hybrid, so you really can't say, oh, I prefer an indica because of how it grows, because I've got indicas that grow like sativas because they're hybrids. So I like a challenge
I
that.
like that. That needs to be on a fucking t-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, when you said it earlier, you're like,
Got indicas
indica
that grow
sativa,
like
and I'm like,
sativas because they're hybrids.
yeah. So I prefer stuff it's going to give me a nice yield, but I want it to be somewhat challenging, right? And I like those big nugs, of course, but when it comes to home, I'm a little less picky. I want it to be fun for me. I want it to be challenging, and I want it to have a nice end product with a high terp. I'm less concerned with high THC numbers. I also think that people are all obsessed with THC because that's like, oh, that's what gets you high. I'm like, no, it all gets you high. The cannabinoid spectrum is what gets you high. It's not
Hey,
just
you should talk. You
THC.
should have a meeting with your sales team about that.
Well, it's actually kind of what we push.
We have.
Everyone,
Yeah.
or
I
are you
mean,
talking about the terpene side of things?
no, yeah, you're good. But I want it to be higher terpene. I'm fine with growing something that's 17%, right? But is producing these
Definitely.
beautiful terps, right? Because at the end of the day, I'm not sitting here being like, I'm going to be fucking stupid high. I want to enjoy what I'm smoking. I want it to taste good from the start of the joint to the end of the joint. I don't want it to taste burnt, and if it does start tasting burnt, I'm putting it out. So big nugs, good cure, finicky, challenging plant for home grow. But that's just my personal preference for home stuff. I don't necessarily like growing the same plant twice at home, unless
Oh
I
wow, okay.
really, really
Yeah,
like it.
that's interesting.
But I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I was slightly involved in the black market for a little bit, but I've never really grown for black market.
Bro,
So,
you were buying weed at 12 years old. You were in the black market, okay?
but I wasn't growing for black market. You know what I
No,
mean?
I
Like,
know, I know.
Sure,
I
sure,
know.
sure.
like all my growing, except for the first guy I grew with, he was involved with the black market, but I wasn't. He was just my teacher, my first teacher on growing.
Mhm.
So like, yeah, I helped, but I wasn't really doing any of the sales shit. Um, so I prefer to just grow what I want to grow, and if I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting, this seems cool, I want to try that. So I kind of have a plethora of things when it comes to it. I don't try and stick to the same plant every single time, um, unless I really fall in love with it. So yeah, that's kind of where my home grow feels lie there.
I can appreciate that. It sounds like you I mean, it's honestly a lot of things you listed are really like bag appeal aspects, but they're not. Bag appeal doesn't mean a bad thing. To me, it's an all-encompassing thing of a lot of things that we as growers are trying to achieve. Right? It's like a frosty plant. It's a big nugs, it's loud packs. Like all that shit that's gonna impress everyone because that's
Yeah,
what
draw you
But
in.
it's yeah, but at the same time, it's like, the effects also matter, and it's like on the growing side, maybe less for you. It sounds like more you're willing. It sounds like all of us are willing to take the hit on maybe a more challenging plant to get, a better product at the end. And that better product might mean more to us as an individual consumer than it does the boss or an investor that's trying to sell it for, dollars on the gram. So tell us about that commercial side of stuff. How does that relate in terms of like what you're looking for there?
Commercial needs to wash well, needs to yield well. I need to be able to pull, you know, um, 30,000 grams per bed minimum, right? Really, the we make profit numbers 28,000 grams per bed, right? So I need to yield high. I need it to be fast. 8 to 10 weeks, right? I need it down. I need it done quick. I do an 8-week flower time, so
Oh, I was gonna say 10 weeks. Like that's pretty
10 weeks is
long.
long. I go for an 8 to 10 week genetic so I can get it
Yeah.
down in 8 weeks, and it's usually lighter in color, right? So um, fast growing, easy growing. But at the same time, I do like to grow shit that's fun. I like to grow shit that tastes good. So I look for pretty similar things in terms of the end result, but it's about how it grows at the end of the day. Like I had Critical Kush for a while. Um, and it just wasn't working in the large scale aspect for hash. It just had, there were too many extra steps with it. It was a heavy feeder. I had to do different things to it every single time, or not different things. I had to treat it differently than my other beds every time I grew it, because it wanted just more food than everything else.
Quit being so needy.
Well, and so it's like on the large scale, I'm looking for something that I kind of take this aspect on the scale that I'm at, especially with living soil, and I think maybe not all growers do this, but I want 90% health everywhere, all the time, right? And I want to be able to do
At minimum.
90%. Yeah, I want to be able to do 90% of the same shit to the entire grow. Um, Mainly because it's about consistency. It's about getting a good result every single time. And in living soil, I found it to be the hardest thing to do is getting it consistent every single time on large scale. We're finally kind of getting to that point where we're hitting good numbers consistently. We've kind of got a better method down that we can do the same thing every single time, and we're getting good results there. So I'm looking for a plant that's easy enough, not too big a nugs because it needs to be better for washing. Um, and it needs to be, slightly high, high terps with a good THC level. But since we're doing rosin, it's not as important. Um, so it's kind of similar notes, except for the fact that I'm going to be growing the same shit every single time. I have a cycle of, I've got 32 washing genetics and I cycle through those, and 16 of them are brand new.
That's not bad. I mean, 32 is not bad at all. Dude, you sound like my chickens right now. I got about 30 chickens and 15 are brand new. But yeah, no, that gives you, okay. So what you just said kind of gave me like this, like, fuck. And then I was like, oh, sweet, because I can see how it could get really boring growing the same shit over and over and over again, right? I've done that for 7 or 8 years, but I also do a pheno hunt every year to try to mix it up, right? See if I can challenge everything on my current palette with 1, 2, 3, maybe a half dozen different strains, throw at it. And if there's something that sticks against that, well, let's see if we can replicate it to the point where it's going to be better, right? And now we can maybe either edge something out or we just added something to the palette.
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging though when you're just growing the same stuff, but when it comes to like the commercial setting and a setting in which it's like a job, right? That seems almost more ideal because again, you're trying to create a like something that you can repeat over and over again, the same product over and over again, and you're
Standard
relying,
SOP.
and you're relying on this guy next to me, right, to kind of finish that into a rosin form, but you are ultimately reliable for to keep it consistent because it's, again, like I said in the beginning of the show, like you're producing the ingredient, he's just doing the process at the end of it. And I know you have a lot of process, a lot of variables that go into it, but ultimately, like when we're creating an extract, we say fire in, fire out because
absolutely
we're relying on that material, bro, and like you got to give us the fire, so if you can replicate that over and over again and maybe even somehow do better, increase the genetic, not increase the genetic potential, but bring out the genetic potential.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I got something for you. Tell me if you agree. I think as growers, we almost only put up barriers for the genetic potential of a plant. And what I mean by that is in a perfect environment, perfect overall situation, the plant is going to grow perfectly, right? It's the lack of us being there every day or watering the right amount or giving it the right pH or the right spectrum of light, whatever it might be. Like all those things we're doing and building this environment around it almost only can take away from it. It's like we have to provide the best possible environment for the genetics. It's not like we can do anything to make them better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think each genetic kind of has a cap, but and this goes on to the structured water a bit because we talked about it briefly earlier. There's one genetic in specific that I have that I've been growing for 2.5 years. Honey banana, great hash plant. And I don't know if you guys have ever grown it, but Pedro's seen it quite a bit. And it's got this weird structure where the middle portion of the plant is like solid nugs, and the top colas is super fluffy, airy, and doesn't really look like a cola. So it's kind of almost flip flopped, right? And it's grown that way for me for 2 years, really even further than that, since about this last 2 cycles in this new building. Um, I've been running this structured water on these plants, and I've just seen some minor differences here and there, mainly towards time and growth time, right? So it's like my cloning process is faster, my veg time is a little faster. I can increase my inputs that I'm feeding at a higher volume, and the plant uptakes them better, right? So small things that aren't really crazy, right? It's like these are all good keynotes, and they're like, yeah, it may shave off 10 days or 5 days on my whole grow cycle, which is money, right? But this honey banana plant, super fluffy, never has ever had a cola on it. Its mom that I've planted now was cloned on structured water. Its mom is on structured water. It's gone through a cycle on structured water, and now I'm doing the second cycle on this honey banana. It has full on colas on it that are the size of my forearm, and I've never once seen this plant ever do it. So it's the plant itself has actually increased in what I've seen. So like I've never seen it put on weight like this before, and it fully changed the nug structure to the plant. And it's not, it's this is only the third mom I've ever had of it, so it's not like this huge genetic
Mm-hmm.
Drift or
change.
something.
Yeah, it didn't drift or anything like that. It's just for some reason, and so far the only possibility that I've seen is the structured water is actively pushing the plant to a different level that it wasn't capable of before.
But that's only because you didn't provide that, right? It's not that
Yeah.
it wasn't capable itself, it's that it just didn't have that environmental factor there, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Because
who's to
there's
really
nature and
say?
nurture,
Yeah.
and like there's nothing more we can do to affect the nature of this plant. I mean, we could breed them, right? We
Mhm.
can obviously we can genetically modify. There's all these things we can do, but like as a home grower or a commercial grower, there's not much you're going to be doing outside of breeding. So
Yeah.
and take that out of the equation. There's nothing really we can do to genetically accelerate a plant. And so outside of nature, there's only nurture,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
us. That's
Yeah.
on us. That's on the equipment we provide, on the schedules we set, and um so do you feel like you've unlocked something? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's hard for me to really say, right? Because it's a brand new thing that I'm seeing. So I have to see consistency with it, because I don't know exactly if it is. And another note on it is that this cycle I've done soil testing on, and the fucking soil's super deficient right now. So it shouldn't be doing this anyways, right? It should be yielding less than what I normally do.
Maybe it's a stress factor. The only thing I can think of right off the top of my head is the auxins, right? Like sending hormones to certain areas of the plant to stretch
Hmm.
it. Um, are those really in play at all in flower in terms of like moving, nutrients to certain colas
I'd,
or certain areas of the plant?
I'd imagine so. I couldn't really give a for sure answer because I don't. I would say yes because the hormones are. I'm also pumping in that hormone through an FPJ extract, which is high in auxin. So I'm drenching that into mid and late stage flowers. So it's being processed. I don't know if it's necessarily being used because I'm not breaking it down on where it's
Hmm.
going, but I'm putting it into the plant for sure. But I've been doing that the whole time. Um, one thing I will say is that across the street in our original building, um, it's definitely unlocked something. I'll say that much. It's like because across the street I don't have structured water. In my new building, I have structured water. So we have side by sides, a control group and a test group. Um, every plant that I've planted since using the structured water in the control group, um, this honey banana, right? We'll just keep to that, is growing the same exact way. So the only difference in grow style is the water.
Which that, dude, that tells me it's a genetic thing that not needs to be unlocked, but it's like within that plant. Because if you saw that same effect across all strains, then yeah, it's just the fact that you've changed up this one aspect, which is the unlocked water, right? But it's not affecting the rest of those strains in that same way. So it's like, is this just a thing that this plant wants or needs, or is this like an additional human, like third party effect that's actually almost like a PGR, right? Not to say
Yeah.
that it's a PGR, but like that, you know, you can kind of like, well, let's like tweak this, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think time will tell, of course, because we have plenty more testing to do with it. But when looking at just what I'm seeing off of this most recent cycle and the data that I've been collecting on it, is that we've been deficient the whole cycle over here, and we're throwing up very high numbers for weights, which I've been deficient before in that room, and I've had 6-foot tall plants and produced 22,000 grams per bed off of 120 plants. This room I'm doing 120 plants, very deficient soil, 4-foot tall plants, maybe 5-foot tall plants, and I'm averaging about 35. And this is the second cycle in that room on that structured water. And so I think it's definitely unlocking something. But, I guess one other keynote to add about the structured water that I can disclose is that it's changing the molecular density of the water molecule to match the intermolecular density of a plant cell. So it's processing in it seems like in a more
Takes less
efficient manner.
energy to do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so like their whole motto is they're trying to get water back to what before humans fucked it up. So it's an interesting thing. It's just something I'm noticing off of it. So I guess I am agreeing with what you're saying in the sense that like you can unlock certain aspects of the plant with your nature, that like with the care you put into it, you can bring out different character traits that weren't previously noticed because it's like you took extra care.
Dude, all you got to do sometimes is move a plant into a different environment and you're going to get a phenotypic expression that wasn't there before, right?
Right,
So
yeah,
it's a
absolutely.
beautiful fucking plant. We've hit our time though. I want to talk about biochar and reusing soil. We have so much more to talk about. Well, I think we'll have to pick this conversation up another time, man. Matthew,
Yeah.
you've been a great guest. I really appreciate your time tonight. Anything you want to shout out before we go?
I'll shout out Pedro because he's crushing it up there. I really appreciate all the work he does. And if you're in Colorado or you're ever out here, come check out Eden Farms. We're at a bunch of dispensaries. We got some, not to eat my own ass, I think we got some pretty good stuff. If you like gummies, pre-rolls, or hash, we got whatever you want there. So, but yeah, I appreciate your guys' time too. This was a great like first experience for a podcast. So it was a lot of fun for me. So
hell yeah, man.
Thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate it. Like I said, it's been a long time coming from my end. Sure.
yeah, well, I'll see you on Monday, dude. So
back at it. You can find me this coming weekend at Gems and Genetics. I think we're gonna probably still try to do a show, but I'm gonna be like in the middle of the freaking, I don't know, wilderness with maybe a hotspot and a laptop or something like that. We'll see. Maybe do some live Men No Dope. They're playing Friday night at that festival, so
nice.
can include that somehow. But Pedro, Superior Buds, you got anything else before we go?
Nah, man, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm
Hell
good.
yeah.
Stay high.
Hey, happy June,
Cheers,
guys.
guys.
Cheers. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Matthew.
Yeah.
Have a good one, guys.
thank you guys.